Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Up first, fire danger, extreme area fire danger up here in the northeast over the Yukon Flats. Kind of expanded from what it was yesterday, which expanded from what it was on Saturday. About the same here in the extreme area fire danger, otherwise pretty good anywhere else in the state, and more rain coming in from the west, so don't really expect too much of a change tomorrow from what you see today. And on satellite imagery, the rain I spoke of here associated with this cloud band pushing in across the western interior there. A little bit of sun breaking out, especially early today over Cook Inlet, but then the clouds rolling in. Clouds developing here along the Gulf Coast on down toward Kodiak Island that should continue to develop and actually produce some showers tonight. Otherwise, pretty solid clouds here from the Alaska range on across the Copper River Basin. Some breaks in the Gulf of Alaska in advance of the next system that's well to the south and southwest of the Gulf of Alaska in the Panhandle. That spreading a little bit of moisture up here into the southeast coast, some mid and high level stuff, but this is actually going to track mostly due north and won't really affect the southeast coast until a weak trailing edge drags across on Wednesday, and that'll just affect the northern areas, stay dry and pretty mild with some sunshine on down to the south, again, as this whole thing shifts northward. Otherwise, not too bad along the eastern Arctic coast, more moisture and clouds back to the west, and then a lot of clouds here along the frontal boundary trailing out into the Bering Sea, although behind it, some breaks up here just south of St. Lawrence Island, around St. Matthew Island, and cloudy skies all the way south to and beyond the Aleutians. And rolling that again, you can see the flow mostly west to east here, and then it splits, and actually one branch to the north, another one to the south, and so the eastward progression slows down, but that whole pattern is shifting eastward now and southward, so that's going to allow this to eventually come right on into the area and bring some rain farther east than the two previous fronts have into the central interior, especially south central Alaska. On the chart here is a system down to the southwest there, otherwise surface high pressure along the southeast coast, good for light wind conditions, maybe some areas of fog and low clouds along and off the coast. A few isolated showers here actually starting to increase this afternoon. That'll continue tonight, but dry over the Cook Inlet area, south central Alaska, pretty good today, except for the increase in the clouds this afternoon, and some isolated thunderstorm activity actually starting off here in the southwest and progressing northeastward throughout the day, but just some scattered isolated strikes there as well as off to the east. And then the main rain area, quite a swath here from the extreme western Arctic coast on down across Kotzebue Sound, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, all the way down to spreading into the greater Togiak area, and pushing in toward Dillingham, up as far east as the Kuskokwim Mountains there, but the dry day, at least the last time I looked, over in the Kuskokwim Valley. And then that trails off into the Pribilofs and the main frontal boundary north of the Aleutians, and it should stay there. You don't have to deal with this warm front here for the Fox Islands. And then for tonight, that sort of breaks apart. This front here, again with a split flow, but westerly flow, and the frontal boundary that's more west-east currently, that's going to break and actually rotate, and there'll be something like this of a trough moving through due to the building higher pressure out here to the west. Ahead of the next storm, they'll bring some small craft advisory winds in late tonight, more rain tomorrow into the far western Aleutians. So a lot of low clouds and fog, westerly winds, not too bad here, keeping the Pribilofs in the IFR weather, but this area of rain will push eastward. Areas of light rain southward, again to Dillingham, Togiak Bay, the Kuskokwim Mountains, and then northward be a little heavier up here over the northwest, especially on the southern slopes of the Western Brooks Range, with rain again over mainly the northern Koyukuk Valley. And then on the lee side of the mountains there, pretty dry conditions with VFR skies over much of the eastern Arctic coast. Isolated thunderstorms taper off to showers and then end probably after midnight there up over the Arctic Village area in eastern Brooks Range. Otherwise, not much change here over the eastern interior. Variably cloudy with diminishing showers, isolated thunderstorms ending. High pressure, North Gulf Coast, light winds, Gulf of Alaska light winds, Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, really no wind to speak of. Low clouds and fog along the coast. Showers a little more widespread tonight here, western Prince William Sound and the south coast of the Kenai Peninsula. And also seeing an enhancement of showers taking place along the western Alaska Range, possibly Kodiak Island. Probably not much of anything for the Alaska Peninsula. Remnant frontal moisture there for the areas from Nelson Lagoon on over to Falls Pass. And then for the Panhandle, staying dry with low clouds and fog along the coast. Tomorrow, that western system brings 30-knot winds into the western Aleutians to 25 for Adak and Atka, and rain advancing past Atka, but not quite making it to the Fox Islands, though. But there'll be a lot of low clouds and fog again across all of the Bering Sea. That frontal boundary, again, stuck here in the west, really not moving at all too much, so it's going to weaken in place, but not quite as fast as the one late Friday and Saturday did, so it's going to hold together a better area of rain right through here from the Alaska Peninsula again, all the way up across, well, up to Kivalina into the Selawik Valley. Some pretty good showers again, western Brooks Range, isolated thunderstorms here on the eastern edge of the moisture field there due to additional heating there as you get into the clear skies. Will be pretty sunny here over the eastern interior. Temperatures at least into the mid, maybe upper 70s once again, could even push 80 over toward Eagle. And those areas there with dry conditions of the Copper River Basin. Moisture not quite as extensive tomorrow as it looked yesterday, but definitely looks wet for the Kenai Peninsula on up into western Prince William Sound, possibly as far west as Girdwood. Maybe the Chugach Mountains could pick up some showers. Cloudy skies over Cook Inlet, Manuscus-Susitna Valley. Risk of a thunderstorm around Denali Park, risk of a shower there for the western Alaska Range, and dry conditions, mostly sunny there for the southeast coast, light winds, little cloudier, of course foggier out along the outer coastline, but a couple of dry days coming up, and except for almost a couple of dry days for the central and southern areas there. But the remnants of that system dragging northeastward probably bring a pretty good chance of some scattered showers in across the northern southeast coast, roughly Sitka on up into Elfin Cove. Less of a chance for Juneau, and but a better chance for Yakutat, and it looks showery for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound. This western system now gets a nudge eastward as that split flow aloft actually pushes eastward with an upper trough, and so that'll bring some rain in across south central Alaska to the Alaska Range and eastward. So look for unsettled wet conditions, Kodiak Island, northward across the Kenai Peninsula, through the valleys, into the central interior, all the way up to the central Arctic coast. Risk of some afternoon thunderstorms here again on the eastern edge of the moisture field, but definitely cloudier and even cooler conditions showing up now over the extreme eastern interior areas, and a widespread area of moisture with this next system, southwesterly flow, rolling rain all the way up, halfway up the Alaska Peninsula. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers, Bristol Bay, but rain, fog, drizzle, all the way back to the central Aleutians, maybe clearing out toward Chimay-Attu. Another system in the Russian Far East here kind of poised to push in eastward, but that won't occur until after Wednesday night, maybe Thursday. And for temperatures this afternoon, across the Panhandle, warmer. And for a change, all in the 60s, although Stewart up to 70 degrees, otherwise lower to mid 60s here from Kawak on up to Skagway, 62 Yakutat, 58 Cordova, lower to mid 60s for the Kenai Peninsula, and upper 60s there in the valley, 68 at Talkeetna, 69 Gulkana, mid 70s Tanana Valley, Fairbanks 75, one of the warmer locations, and 74 up at Fort Yukon. Notice Chalkyitsik was up to 81 degrees this afternoon. Eagle 69 and 65 over at Bettles. North side, north slope warming up again after the cool down from yesterday, back up to 75 at Umiat Airfield. Dead Horse 72 degrees, otherwise some really nice 60s up there along the coast, back into the 50s here over the northwest. And of course, along the coast, temperatures in the 50s there with the rain occurring, as much as a third of an inch falling here from the Nome to Golovin area. Well, Unalakleet had about a half an inch of rain, so a pretty solid area of rain out here to the west, keeping it cooler there. Temperatures in the 50s and pretty uniform. Lower 50s out toward the Pribilofs and St. Lawrence Island, and lower 60s. Adak and Atka back down to 50 at Shimia. 60s for the Alaska Peninsula, but Kodiak stuck at 55. Lows for tonight, mid to upper 50s, central interior up to the Yukon Flats, 40s to lower 50s, south of the Alaska Range to the North Gulf Coast. Same thing for the Panhandle. Also the same thing here for the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. Highs for tomorrow in the lower to mid 70s over the central and eastern interior areas, with the warmest conditions again from Tok Northway on up toward Eagle, with lower 60s, Koyukuk Valley down toward Tanana. Cooler yet, mid 50s here as you get out west there. The coolest conditions up over the northwest. Some areas holding in the upper 40s from Point Lay to Noatak on out to maybe Kivalina around 50 degrees. Otherwise lower 50s, cool down now for the north slope, and even the eastern interior lower to mid 70s. Maybe warmer toward the border, but a warm up now here occurring over the southern southeast coast, upper 60s to maybe as high as mid 70s there. That'll hold through Wednesday as well. And for the flying weather, VFR late tonight, early tomorrow, all across the Panhandle, eastern interior, IFR lurking just south of the Kenai Peninsula and right along the east side of Kodiak Island. VFR back to widespread IFR coming inland now. You can see covering much of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta down to the Kilbrook Mountains, northeastward in across the Koyukuk Valley, back out to the west of Kivalina on up to Cape Lisburne, with VFR on the eastern Arctic coast. Widespread IFR holds out here to the west and along the coast, kind of retreats back in the afternoon there, but marginal VFR into the Kuskokwim Valley, or at least the Kuskokwim Mountains. Northeastward could be a patch IFR, southern slopes of the Central Brooks Range. Good VFR over all of the southeast coast, and marginal VFR roughly from Elfin Cove to Yakutat into Prince William Sound, south along the Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak Island, with the IFR along and just east of Kodiak State Airport to Fognak Island. And for passes, Anatuvik should be marginal VFR, as well as that again with the lowest conditions on both those passes on the southern entrance. Risk of some IFR, southern entrance of both passes, but generally marginal. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR, same forecast for rainy. Ceilings visibilities will be the VFR variety from windy. Isabel and Mentasta staying open. Tanita, same forecast. Portage zone, marginal VFR, chance of IFR eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR for the next couple of days. For tomorrow, which may go marginal as the remnants of that front drags through on Wednesday. And for freezing levels, a little cooler, 8,000 feet here through the central interior, with 10,000 feet retreating back into the Gulf of Alaska. Otherwise 10 to 12,000 over the Panhandle, 10,000 over the central Bering Sea. And for icing, pretty widespread of light to isolated moderate rime here, coming into the western interior northward across Kotzebue Sound, southward to the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay, and some areas here coming northward toward the North Gulf Coast, probably getting in possibly to the Yakutat area. Scattered areas of mixed with the convection over the central eastern interior, and then some more icing, but way up there, above 14,000 feet with a warm air mass out over the Aleutians. And the jet stream here sailing out of the northwest from the Russian Far East or west-northwest. Still have split flow in the forecast for tomorrow, again stalling that thing out in the west, but this whole pattern will be shifting eastward and southward, so that front's going to come and the moisture will be right into the central interior on Wednesday. And looking at the 9,000 foot wind flow chart, southeasterlies 15 to 25 coming up and then sort of just dying out as they approach the North Gulf Coast. Southwest flow 20 to 35 knots in across the Yukon Delta, up to 40 knots. Pretty windy conditions up there. That active trough moving eastward off the Arctic coast. 40 knot winds out of the southwest there at 9,000 feet. Another big increase in the wind size, 50 knots into the western Aleutians with that next system. And at 3,000 feet southwest, 30 to 35 knots, turn westerly, fall back to 25 to 30 into the southwest coast. Pretty good swath. Southwest winds here 25, increasing to 40 knots. Windiest conditions, Brooks Range on out to the central eastern Arctic coast, Mackenzie River Delta, 45 knots there. Lighter down to the south here, and the main flow between the high and the low staying south of the area. So pretty light and variable winds here across the southeast coast, but could see some 30 knotters coming up due to that lower level system. So that would actually be more easterly there, 30 knots along the North Gulf Coast in a really narrow band. So for turbulence, pretty smooth for the most part, nothing to worry about here, southeast interior, Gulf of Alaska, and the Panhandle. Those southwest winds, areas of moderate chop, pretty likely here along and on the lee side of the Kuskokwim Mountains, on up to the northeast, even more widespread, rougher stuff there from the Brooks Range on out to the central and eastern Arctic coast, going back to smooth here along the west coast. And in windier conditions, light to isolated moderate chop over the Aleutians northward to St. Matthew Island, and also from let's see, that's Atka on out to Kiska Island and beyond, but below about 4,000 feet. And after the break, I'll be back with the ice edge and the marine forecasts.
When a wildfire breaks out, an incident meteorologist crunches data to come up with the forecasts that will be used to answer some pressing questions. Where can the fire crews safely position themselves? And how long can they be in place?
You'll see a forecast for the general public that seems like a really nice day.
Light winds to start the day out of the south, but the winds will pick up and even change direction as the frontal boundary moves on through.
It seems like a great day, let's go to the beach, but your fire could be burning in one direction at 1 minute, and as soon as that front passes, you got the fire burning in another direction.
Predicting fire weather can be a tricky business, and it requires a lot of training. Each year, all the incident meteorologists gather for a week at the National Interagency Fire Center in Boise, Idaho. It's a chance to compare notes, for the new IMETs to learn from the veterans, and for everyone to practice with some key fire weather equipment, like the pie ball.
A pie ball is a pilot balloon. Pilot balloon. That's how it goes, yeah.
The pie ball is a helium-filled balloon that's launched to track the winds up in the atmosphere.
Winds are pretty much the most important thing to be concerned about on fires. And when we're out on fires, we launch these a couple times during the day, once in the morning at least and in the afternoon.
Using an instrument called a theodolite, IMETs measure the angle of the path that the balloon takes.
62 degrees.
Then they calculate the wind's speed and direction.
As it goes up, we see where the stronger winds are, where the light winds are. Ready?
Launch.
On a fire, although the IMET is the only weather specialist on the scene, he or she is not working alone.
It's not just the incident meteorologist that's out there on a forest fire, it's the entire National Weather Service.
As firefighters rely on the IMETs in the field, the IMETs rely on their counterparts at National Weather Service forecast offices around the country. The local forecast offices keep in contact with the IMETs on fires in their specific regions. Forecast office meteorologists watch for threatening signs like increasing winds, high temperatures, or very low humidities. And when they see trouble, they issue a so-called red flag warning. That lets the fire teams know to expect explosive fire growth. Backing up the local forecast offices, there are meteorologists tracking fire weather on a national scale.
This is the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma.
Meteorologists at the Storm Prediction Center give national firefighting agencies advanced warning of where fires are likely to get started, so the agencies can determine where in the country firefighters will be needed most.
This map is showing fire danger ratings on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 correlates to an extreme fire danger.
The biggest priority here during the fire season is to be on the lookout for those great fire starters in the sky. Dry thunderstorms.
All it takes is one lightning strike to ignite a fire. In the west, quite commonly, there's a deep, dry layer of air beneath the thunderstorm, and so a lot of the rain that does occur with those thunderstorms evaporates before it gets to the ground.
The answer? Cloud-to-ground lightning detectors. These devices can pick up magnetic waves from lightning within a 100-mile radius. Using these readings, forecasters at the Storm Prediction Center can track a storm almost strike by strike. Their reports are posted on the web and can be instantly accessed by anyone, even an incident meteorologist at a fire in the middle of nowhere.
We have a little satellite dish that we take and set up in our laptop computer. We also have model equations that we can look at, the mathematical interpretations of what the atmosphere might be doing.
Without this equipment, we'd be in a pickle out there in the field.
In fact, sometimes the most important piece of firefighting equipment at the scene of a fire isn't an axe or a helicopter. It's the satellite dish, bringing weather information to the IMET. IMET Jim Wallman can tell you that. When he was dispatched to the Pine Fire near Lebec, California in 2004, his satellite data and forecasts soon became the focal point of the firefighting operation.
When I had arrived, the fire had pretty much consumed most of the hillside and had threatened quite a few homes.
To tame the fire, firefighters wanted to set a burnout, a deliberate fire that would burn the vegetation above the main fire before it turned that way. They needed to know from Jim when the wind conditions were just right to light it. It was a tense moment. If the burnout was lit at the wrong time, the fire could have raged out of control.
If the wind came in the opposite direction and you lit the fire, then it would have actually made the situation that much worse.
When he was confident, Jim gave the go-ahead forecast, and the fire crew went ahead with the burnout. Thankfully, the forecast was accurate, and the burnout was a complete success.
It was a big relief, a lot of smiles.
What could have been a major tragedy had been averted.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, it's melting was the word I got from the sea ice analyst. This area continuing to diminish, still some 4 to 6 tenths in here, and then forecast is, and also this opening up farther to the north, and the forecast, everything's sort of shifting northward over the next couple of days, or compressing northward and continuing to melt, especially in this area. Southeast coast winds, south coast, south 15, southeast 20. On the north coast, seas as high as 6 feet. Northwest 15 for Clarence Strait. Really light wind, Stevens Passage, and Frederick Sound there, 10 knots, variable to south, with 15 for northern Lynn Canal and seas at about 4 feet. Excuse me, for Wednesday, those light winds, predominantly southeast now, for Stevens Passage, and Frederick Sound here may be variable to east, but all light through there, northwest 15, Clarence Strait, south 20, northern Lynn Canal. South to southeast, much of the coastline becoming variable and then turning northwest at 10, so quite light winds even down south, seas still 5 to 6 feet. For Prince William Sound, light easterlies tomorrow at 10 knots, 2-foot sea. Same thing northern Cook Inlet, becoming variable south of the Forelands. Easterlies 15, Kachemak Bay pick up to 20 knots there for the Barrens. And then small craft advisories, that system coming northward. East 25, 8-foot seas turn northeast there for the western North Gulf Coast. 15 to 20 knot winds from Chillicothe Strait to the east side of Kodiak Island. And then for Wednesday, that drops off to light variable conditions here. East side of Kodiak, seas at about 5 feet. Slider seas here for Chillicothe Strait. Light winds on up into Kachemak Bay. Light easterlies for Cook Inlet from, well, south to north, even north of the Forelands. East 10 knots, seas 2 feet. Southeast, south to southeast. The winds lighter on Wednesday here for the North Gulf Coast. And those seas coming back down to 5 to 6 feet. 15 knot winds, a little bit of an increase for Prince William Sound. Same thing for Bristol Bay, southeast 15, 4-foot seas. Light southwest winds for the peninsula, 10 to 15 knots, strongest on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. Castle, Cape to Sitkinak, easterlies at 15. And then for Wednesday, light variable winds in that zone on Wednesday, south to southwest, 15 knots for the peninsula, southwest 15, Bristol Bay, 5-foot seas everywhere. And for the Fox Islands, westerlies 15 knots, seas 4 to 5 feet, turning south at 20 knots here for the Central Aleutians, 4 to 5-foot seas, staying pretty light even on the south side there, but a big increase in the wave heights. And of course, with those 30-knot winds, seas up to 11 feet out west. And then those swing around to the west and fall back to 20 knots out over the far western zone. And then westerlies, small craft advisory, westerlies 25, 7 to 11-foot seas, all the way over to the Fox Islands, turning more southerly there in the north side of Unalaska Island. And for the southwest coast, south to southwest at 15 knots, 4 to 5 foot seas, southwest 15 St. Lawrence Island, back into the northern Bering Sea, west 20. That's where it will be the windiest tomorrow for the Pribilofs with 7 foot seas. Then those turn south at 15 knots. Now the windiest conditions will be St. Lawrence Island on Wednesday at 20, otherwise south 15, 5 foot seas along the coast, southeast of 15 with 6 foot seas, St. Matthew Island. Up along the eastern Beaufort Sea coast from the central coast, the demarcation point southwest 25 knots, 5 to 7 foot seas, west 25 on the west side there with 7 foot seas, and then back down to 20, falling to 15, becoming southwest from Wales to Cape Thompson. And then small craft advisories move into those areas there from Wales all the way up to Cape Beaufort here, maybe even some higher gusts there along those western capes. Southwest 20 on the western coast, light variable winds I'd call it here for the central coast, turning east 15, back around to the south at 15. Those seas coming down a little bit, 3 to 4 feet. And for tonight, we've got a front pushing inland here, really weak down to the south with a weak trailing edge bringing some moisture in toward Dillingham and Togiak with this complex system out here, actually the original frontal boundary, swinging around, pivoting with in a trough there, keeping it unsettled for the Alaska Peninsula, building ridge that's causing that due to a storm developing farther to the west, which tomorrow will spread some small craft advisory and winds and considerable rain into the western and Aleutian southwest Bering. Rain coming eastward gradually makes a pretty good jog, and also some moisture coming up from the south there, which will combine for a pretty good rain area here, south central Alaska to Kodiak, gradually ending in the afternoon, but a good solid area of moisture all the way up to the central Arctic coast, and a trailing edge brings some showers into the northern panhandle. Otherwise, even warmer into the 70s tomorrow over the southern panhandle here. It could be maybe even higher on, let's see, that'll be on Wednesday. Let's look at the weather. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.